Shirley Russell was a determined woman, determined enough to reach the rank of captain in the United States Marine Corps. When this decorated officer turned up missing, her colleagues refused to believe she'd gone AWOL. It was unclear whether Captain Shirley Russell was dead or alive.
In 1989, a decorated Marine Corps captain vanished from her quarters at Quantico, Virginia, without a trace. Shirley Gibbs Russell was a rising officer, respected by her peers, known for her discipline and dedication. She was the kind of person who followed the rules, never missed a report, and had a perfect record in the Marines. Yet one day, she simply disappeared, leaving behind unanswered questions and a growing sense of dread among colleagues and family. Shirley had recently ended her marriage to Robert Russell. For decades, the military had been her world, and her separation from Robert had been handled with care, moving her temporarily to off-base housing while bachelor officer quarters became available. But what seemed like a straightforward transition would soon spiral into a nightmare that would require the full attention of federal authorities. On March 2nd, Shirley requested leave to finalize her separation and clean her former residence. For days later, on March 6th, her commanding officer arrived at her office, expecting to find her at her desk, only to discover it empty. Her absence was immediately alarming. Shirley Russell had never been late, had never missed an assignment.
When I first met Shirley Russell, I was very impressed with the fact that she was a black female captain, because we just don't have that many in the Marine Corps, and that she had come from a poor background and was making something of herself, and she seemed so energized and so eager to keep moving up the rank structure.
And there was no reason for her to vanish. Authorities quickly began investigating her disappearance. Her last known movements were tied to her ex-husband, Robert, who had been helping her with touch-up painting at their former quarters. Robert claimed Shirley had walked to the base exchange for paint around mid-afternoon and never returned. But his story contained inconsistencies. The base's corporal on duty had glimpsed a woman who could have been Shirley at a different time than Robert stated, wearing clothes that did not match his description. A blue station wagon was also observed near the storage shed of the former residence around 5 p.m., an hour later than Robert said he had left for Pennsylvania. Suspicion grew. Shirley's quarters showed no signs that she had moved out, and a rust-colored stain on the shed floor, dismissed by Robert as paint, caught the attention of Lieutenant Colonel Hodges. It looked suspiciously like blood. At this point, the Naval Investigative Service alerted the FBI.
Probably 4 or 5 miles away. There's no way in the world that she would have walked to the PX from their quarters.
And agents began a full-scale federal investigation. Robert Russell became the first person interviewed. Calm and cooperative at first, he detailed his day, claiming he was at a friend's house in Pennsylvania while Shirley had ostensibly gone for paint. Yet the FBI quickly discovered inconsistencies. He had purchased a .25 caliber Raven semi-automatic 2 days before Shirley's disappearance, claiming it was for her protection. But Shirley already had a service-issued firearm. Why would she need another gun? Further investigation into Robert's past revealed a troubled history.
When you have somebody missing, you either have a case of an abduction, you have a case of a missing person, somebody who's walked away for whatever reason, or you have foul play. So the initial investigation that the FBI was involved in ran all 3 of those investigative lines.
He had been discharged from the Marines for dereliction of duty and fraud, losing both his rank and reputation. Despite this, he moved into Shirley's quarters at Quantico, attempting to rebuild his life while Shirley advanced in her career. Their marriage had been strained by Robert's alcoholism, excessive drinking, and ultimately physical abuse. Shirley had sought counseling and even joined support groups, determined to separate herself from a man she no longer trusted. Robert's instability and obsession soon became evident. He began suspecting Shirley of having an affair, despite clear evidence to the contrary. He enlisted a former mistress, Sandy Flint, to monitor Shirley's activities. Sandy reported back to him but found nothing incriminating. Robert's delusions only grew, and he began installing listening devices and invading private spaces, including Shirley's friend's home, in an effort to catch her in imagined infidelity. He told Sandy that if Shirley ever went missing, he would ensure it would be blamed on someone else.
Robert Russell had traveled to St. Clair, Pennsylvania on March 4th, 1989, and he stayed with his family the weekend of March 4th, March 5th.
Exposing a chilling premeditation in his thinking. Meanwhile, the FBI followed every lead. Shirley's bank and credit card accounts showed no activity after March 4th, and friends and family reported no contact from her. Investigators discovered that Robert had borrowed Sandy Flint's blue station wagon on the day of Shirley's disappearance. He returned hours later after a 4-hour drive to Pennsylvania. Combined with witness accounts and timing inconsistencies, agents began to theorize that Shirley's body may have been in the vehicle during the trip. Searches of the Quantico base yielded nothing. Dozens of Marines scoured dense training grounds, helicopters flew over thousands of acres, and transport trucks moved teams across the area. But there was no sign of Shirley. Even the FBI lab's examination of the station wagon and other evidence yielded no direct physical traces of her presence. Muriatic acid, used to clean the concrete in Shirley's shed, destroyed the rust-colored stain, eliminating a potential forensic link. Robert's behavior after Shirley's disappearance painted a clearer picture. He meticulously cleaned the borrowed station wagon with his brother, using vacuuming and deodorizer to eliminate any trace of evidence. His obsession with concealment, combined with his prior criminal history, suggested a calculated effort to cover his tracks. Investigators also reviewed Robert's planning from a chilling source: a floppy disk confiscated during his prior Marine discharge. On it was a detailed 26-step plan for murdering Shirley. The plan outlined his intentions, his methods, and even included racial blame as a final misdirection. This document confirmed what investigators had suspected. Robert had premeditated the murder long before Shirley went missing. By connecting Robert's documented obsession, behavioral patterns, and circumstantial evidence, prosecutors were able to construct a case. They argued that the purchase of the firearm, the blue station wagon, and his careful efforts to manipulate witnesses all pointed to premeditated murder. The absence of a body and weapon made it a challenging prosecution, but the mosaic of circumstantial evidence was compelling. On March 4, 1989, Shirley Gibbs Russell's disappearance became a matter of life and death. Robert Russell had lured her to the shed, where she was killed. That evening, he transported her body in Sandy Flint's station wagon, a 4-hour drive to Pennsylvania. There, he used his knowledge of abandoned mines to conceal her remains, allegedly employing dynamite to prevent discovery. The jurors would later hear that these actions demonstrated both intent and premeditation. After years of investigation, Robert Russell's meticulous planning could not save him. On May 3, 1991, he was convicted of murdering his wife, Shirley Gibbs Russell. Sentenced to life without parole, he would never regain his freedom. Shirley's life, career, and potential were violently cut short by a man who once swore to serve honorably in the Marine Corps. The case left a lasting impact on those who knew Shirley. Her colleagues at Quantico mourned her as if they had lost a family member.
We didn't have a body, we didn't have eyewitnesses, we didn't have weapon, and it just took a tremendous amount of investigative skill and effort to put the pieces together, to go out and search out the leads, tremendous amount of hours and energy that these FBI agents took to gather the evidence.
The investigation itself highlighted the complexity of relying solely on circumstantial evidence in the absence of a body or weapon, pushing federal prosecutors to assemble a complete picture from behavior, testimony, and forensic clues. Shirley Gibbs Russell's story is a haunting reminder of how quickly trust and routine can unravel, and how obsession can turn deadly. A decorated officer, a dedicated Marine, a woman of discipline and courage, her life ended at the hands of someone who once shared it, leaving behind a cautionary tale of control, premeditation, and the lengths a determined killer will go to cover his crimes. Her legacy, however, is not only one of tragedy. The meticulous work of the FBI, Naval Investigative Service, and her fellow Marines ensured that justice was ultimately served. Robert Russell's downfall underscores the importance of persistence, forensic ingenuity, and the careful piecing together of circumstantial evidence to reveal the truth. Even decades later, Shirley's story continues to resonate. Her disappearance and murder remind us of the fragility of life, the dangers of obsession, and the courage of those who pursue justice against overwhelming odds. Captain Shirley Gibbs Russell's name endures as a symbol of dedication, service, and the relentless pursuit of justice, even when faced with darkness in its most calculated form.